Jeffrey Leftwich.
Present.
Adam Rainwater.
Present.
Steve Shaw.
Present.
From Hart County, Paul Brackett.
Present.
Don Frazee.
Here.
Roy Lampion.
Yes.
Vicky Lampion.
Present.
John Lawler.
Present.
David Milton.
Here.
Timothy Richardson.
Here.
Marky Sparks.
Here.
Daniel Street.
Here.
Cynthia Street.
Here.
Catherine Thomas.
Here.
From LaRue County, Jerry Bird.
Here.
Don Cutlip.
Here.
Richard Gilbert.
Here.
Courtney Gilbert.
Here.
Teresa Gilbert.
Here.
Frank Hornback. Here. Roy Hornback.
Here.
Sharon Hornback.
Here.
Bill Manning.
Here.
Oscar McGuffey.
Here.
Wayne Murphy.
It's Gil Myers, just on the long
Yeah, I
line.
understand. Wayne Murphy is not here. Gil Myers. Here. Joanne Myers.
Joanne Myers, present.
R.L. Reed.
Here.
Jonathan Watson.
Present.
Kathy Watson.
Present.
Beverly Watson.
Present.
Darren Williams.
Here.
Kathy Yarble.
Here.
And those, you guys are the eligible voting participants of the meeting. And our folks from RPK are gonna do some math, and then we will get started. While they're doing that, I just wanna thank a few folks. One, I wanna thank the RPK staff, Jeffrey Prophet and Hunter Whitaker for helping, arrange this meeting and doing all the important stuff to make this happen. I'd like to thank you all for participating in this important process. And I'd also like to thank the Hart County Judge Executive, Joe Choate, for opening up the courthouse. He deserves a lot of credit for opening up this space for this official purpose, and we appreciate his leadership. And in just a minute, we will start with our program.
See, based on how many folks from each county signed in the Republican registration, what the weight of each vote will be.
Oh,
Some streets too.
they're on the, yeah, looks like my.
Focus.
Yes.
What you focus.
Did you write it in the wrong line? Do what? Okay, good.
He's such a dweeb. I love him. You Good. Good name.
All right. Thanks again for everybody being here this evening. My name is Timothy Gillum. I'm the chairman of the Second District Republican Committee, and I'm also the chair of the Warren County Republican Party. And the purpose of this meeting is to nominate a Republican candidate for the special election, which is going to be held on March 19th for state representative in the 24th district, and that will be to fill the remaining term of Brandon Reed. Brandon Reed is not with us this evening, but as a public servant, I think he's done a great job in Frankfurt, and we owe him our debt of gratitude for his public service over the years. According to RPK rules, in the case where an office for which a nomination is to be filled embraces more than one county, but less than that of a congressional district, a committee made up of the county committees of each of the affected counties shall make the selection. Given that House District 24 lies within the 2nd Congressional District, our state chairman, Robert Benvenuti, has designated myself to call this meeting and to serve as chair. We will begin the meeting with a prayer led by Greene County GOP Chair Steve Shaw.
Bow your heads. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for letting us come together today to take part in this wonderful process, democratic process. We thank you for the freedoms that you give us every day, Lord. We ask that you please be with the candidates tonight as they try to bring their message of what's best for our community, what's best for our district, and what's best for our state and world, Lord. We just ask that you be with all of us and open our hearts and minds and allow us to make the best choice for our constituents, for our communities, Lord. And we ask that you please be with us all as we drive back tonight to our individual homes, as the roads are slick. We ask that you be with each one of us, Lord, and please bless our community and bless our state and America. In Christ Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. At this time, we will have the pledge led by LaRue County GOP Chair Gary Burke.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, and we are going to have the Kentucky pledge led by Hart County Chair Vicky
The flag.
To the sovereign state for which it stands, one commonwealth, with diversity, natural wealth, beauty, and grace from on high.
Thank you. I think the Hart County folks had a little bit of an advantage because they recite that at their meetings, and so we appreciate that. The chair of this meeting, myself, and the secretary of the meeting are required to sign the certification of nomination form once the committee chooses our nominee. I have asked Hart County GOP Chair Vicki Lampion to serve as the secretary for this committee. RPK has copies of the agenda and procedures available, or if you need them, or if you don't have a copy. An individual may only be placed into nomination by a voting member of Greene, Hart, or the LaRue County committees, as they have been verified with the state party. If only one person is nominated, I'll ask for a motion to close nominations and a motion to nominate that person by acclamation with no balloting necessary. Per RPK rules, if we have multiple nominations, the candidate must receive 50% of the vote plus one. If more than one candidate is placed into nomination, all candidates will be asked to leave the room and be called back individually to address the committee in alphabetical order. Each candidate will be given up to 3 minutes to address the nominating committee, and then there will be up to 5 additional minutes given to the committee for questions. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make an amendment. May I? All right, I'd like to amend, I'd like to move that we allow up to 15 minutes to offer questions to the candidates, and with answers, their answers no longer than 1 minute.
We have a motion and a second on allowing 15 minutes for candidates for questions and answers.
Up to 15 minutes collectively.
So 15 minutes total, so their speech plus questions, and for their answers not to exceed 1 minute. So no candidate will speak for more than 15 minutes total allotted. Is that correct?
So right now, the procedures say they'll have 3 minutes to speak and 5 minutes to answer questions. Which portion would you want to amend, their speech or their question and answer?
Just to clarify, the narrative that they spoke with, is that to announce who they are and what they believe in, and then the questions, they have how many minutes to answer the question? I guess I would ask for clarification first.
So 3 minutes to give a statement, and then 5 minutes total for questions and answers.
So that we're taking all these people, we all together collectively have 5 minutes and to question one of the, to question
Correct.
each candidate.
Would
there was no mention how much time they had to answer. As
Well,
far
it'll
as
be
the
5
motion.
minutes total for questions and answers, so.
Okay,
So it's up to them to, answer in a way that maximizes perhaps.
That
their
motion.
We want to do
Yeah.
have respect for everybody, but, you know, and the reason why I raised this, motion, or request this motion is because we feel it's an important matter, and having a little bit more time hopefully will allow us to do that.
So the motion on the floor is for 15 minutes, total for their statement and question and answers.
The amendment, I move to allow up to 15 minutes for us to offer questions to the candidates with their answers no longer than 1 minute. That's the motion.
Okay. And there's been a second. And all in favor signify by saying. Is there any discussion?
Debatable.
Yeah, I
Could
think it
you
is.
clarify?
Yes.
Could you clarify, is that 5 minutes for each candidate, and that means 15 or 15 for questions and answers per candidate?
I think it's per candidate.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Is that correct?
With
15?
1 minute, with
No.
1 minute answers
No,
for the questions?
If I may,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, the answer to that question is, the way I understood it is, it was 3 minutes for their narrative. Then when they come back for questions, okay,
Correct, so the process would be, candidates that are not speaking at the time leave the room. So if I'm a candidate, I would have 3 minutes to speak, immediately have the 5-minute question and answer session. And then I would leave the room. The next candidate would come in, have 3 minutes to speak, and then a 5-minute question and answer session.
okay, that makes a change. But,
But you want more time for it.
So each person gets
I think
5 minutes.
Add, make it 10 minutes for the question and answer, and I don't see any reason to have a 1 minute,
So you have a
just gives us a little longer time. You know, if it's a question they want to spend longer on, I'd hate for them to just have a minute as opposed to, you know,
Are
less.
you okay with that
Yeah.
amendment? So that would be 3 minutes for an opening
That's what he
statement,
said,
and then a
friendly
total of 10
amendment.
minutes for questions and answers.
About 13 minutes total.
Yes. And so is there, so that's the motion, and is there a second? And all, any
That's
discussion?
debatable.
Yeah.
I still have a little issue with no limit on the answer, because somebody could get on a rant about their old yeller when they was, and answer one question and take their whole time, which might keep somebody from else from answering. I like the 1 minute answer, or if somebody was agreeable to a 2 minute answer.
That's a friendly amendment.
So would you?
I'll second that amendment.
go for
Can't
one
amend
or
an
2
amendment,
minutes?
can he?
Jerry's amendment.
Jerry,
This is it,
asking
isn't
for
it? This
1 or
is the
2
last
minutes
amendment, though.
response.
1 minute, I think, would be adequate.
Okay, so 3 minutes of an opening statement, 10 minutes for question and answers, answers not to exceed 1 minute in time. Okay, any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the rules are amended. The election of a nominee will be conducted by secret ballot unless only one individual is placed into nomination. If more than one individual is placed in the nomination, each individual nominated will be asked to appoint a representative to observe the tallying of votes. An individual must receive 50% of the total, greater than 50% of the total votes cast in order to be elected as the nominee. In this case, an individual must receive 9,310 of the total 18,618 votes cast. In the event that more than 2 individuals are placed into nomination and no candidate receives greater than 50% of the vote, the lowest vote getter will be removed from the balloting. Balloting will continue until one candidate receives greater than 50% of the vote. Actual vote totals will not be announced. After a voting round, the chairman will report whether a candidate has exceeded 50% of the total votes. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to amend that first sentence, saying that actual votes will be announced.
Okay, so the motion to amend the rules is to change the rules to announce that vote totals be announced.
So, the amendments have already, the procedures were passed. So that would have needed to come up when we were passing the meeting procedures, because that's listed in the meeting procedures.
How do we do the other one?
We have one word.
Yes.
I think we accepted the meeting procedures that we're going through right now.
So, one more time,
The question is whether or not we've accepted the meeting procedures.
or only the amendment on the floor to the meeting procedures?
What we're doing.
That's what we're doing now.
Yeah. I think that would be within order.
I agree. And so the motion on the floor is to announce the vote totals after each, is the motion to announce the vote totals after each round?
Yes, please.
And is there a second? I think I heard one.
I second it.
Make a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the procedures will be amended.
This is normally
So after each voting round, the chairman will report whether or not a candidate has exceeded 50% of the total votes. If no candidate receives 50% of the votes, the chairman will announce which candidate will be proceeded to the next round of voting. The number of registered Republicans from that county and that district will be divided by the number of individuals who are present at the meeting and who are eligible to vote. At this time, we will take nominations from the floor, and no second is needed. Do we have a nomination?
I'll nominate Courtney Gilbert from LaRue County.
I'll nominate Mr. Ryan Bivens, also from LaRue County.
We have two nominations. Are there any additional nominations from the floor?
Motion to
By that, you mean someone different than the two that have been mentioned?
Yeah, are there any additional nominees other than the two that have been nominated?
Motion to close nomination.
Is there a second? All in favor of closing nominations signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Maybe no one to nominate is good.
Nominations have been closed at this time. And I would ask that candidates exit the room to my left. And there is a little break room that you can,
Go fight it out.
we're gonna do it in alphabetical order, so, so we'll have Mr. Bivens, so he can stay in the room.
So you can stay in the room.
Yeah, okay. So Courtney will exit the room. And also, just as a housekeeping matter, there is a restroom on the first floor on this side of the building, so if anybody needs to do that, that's down there. I think the one up here is out of order. So, I don't know how long we're gonna be here, so you might need these back. At this time, I will ask Mr. Bivens to come forward. Per the amended meeting procedures, he will have 3 minutes to address the committee, and then 10 minutes of question and answers not to exceed 1 minute. Once he is done, he will then leave the room, and Ms. Gilbert will follow him.
Point of order,
Yes, sir.
did we accept the procedures, meeting procedures?
The way the chair worded it, once the second amendment was passed, was all those in favor, we've now passed the meeting procedures.
Another point of order,
Yes.
sir. Can I ask that the speaker be in front of a microphone so we don't delay in not being able to hear?
Why don't you just take a seat here, and I think you can.
The only one that stays on without pushing is the one you, the others you have to hold down, just, you know.
Okay, well then I'll let him take this seat, and then I'll.
And Jeffrey will have a time sheet for each candidate that he will hold up when there's 1 minute remaining, and then at time, so that way our candidates can be informed of where they are. So Jeffrey, as a reminder, meeting procedures
good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to be here with you tonight. I apologize ahead of time. I'm fighting a sinus drainage issue. Kentucky weather isn't lovely. But anyway, my name is Ryan Bivens. I'm a first-generation farmer from LaRue County. 23 years ago, I moved to LaRue County. I chose to be a part of that community. The part I love about that community, and I think it echoes into Greene County and Hart County, is the people. You drive down the road, and these people, they wave to you without knowing you. Nobody's a stranger. That's what's great about rural America. However, as a farmer, and more importantly as a father, I have 2 kids, Cyrus and Avery. I think some of our freedoms are starting to slip away from us. There's things I don't like to see of what's happening, whether it be in D.C. or Frankfurt. There's ideology being pushed down our throats. I don't like them. As a man of God, I know everything I do every day would not be possible if it wasn't for the good Lord. And for those that don't believe that, you've never tried farming before, because obviously that takes a big part of that to be a farmer. But when you look and you see what we do every day, the reason we do it, in my opinion, and I think for all of you all, we do it for our kids. We do it for your kids, my kids, we do it for our grandkids. When I was asked why I decided to run for this office and why I seek this special election, it's because I want to lay the groundwork. I want to help to ensure that for future generations, they live in what I consider to be the greatest country in the world, and the greatest state in the world. I promise to you one promise. As a state legislature, if I'm elected to serve in the House, whether it be through a special election or later on in the primary and then the general election, is to use common sense. And oftentimes, I think it's what's missing today. I think we're missing common sense. I think it would be very advantageous to have an individual that's in the primary who's going to go on and win the general election this fall, or put them in place right now. That way you have a person that is serving. You have a person that gets a step forward. You have a person that is there to represent you all and speak on your behalf and speak on our future generations' behalf. Once again, thank you all. Thank you for your commitment to the job you do, and thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your support.
And we will now start the 10-minute clock for question and answers. And just a reminder to the nominee that answers should not exceed 1 minute, and Jeffrey will alert you when your 1 minute is up.
Ms. Gilbert.
We have not seen you at Republican meetings, I'm not really familiar with you. How long have you been a Republican?
I've been a Republican, so growing up, I'll be the first to admit, like many, I grew up in a county that was 90% Democrat. If you were going to vote in a county election, which I think is important sometimes, you had to follow as a Democrat. But I switched, and I'll tell you the day I switched. I went to go switch early on during the Obama years. I was very good friends with an individual that was the commissioner of agriculture, and he told me, he said, don't switch, I'm going to run for governor, we need Democrats that we can put into office. He convinced me not to switch, and after he lost by 83 votes, I was sick to my stomach, so I went and switched right after that. And, you know, at this day and time, I question people, if they're a Christian, how they can be on that side of the fence. Let's be honest. So, I'm a proud Republican now. I have not been involved in the party locally, I'll agree, but the job of the local parties is to support candidates. And I think for several years now, I've proved myself as LaRue County by supporting Republican candidates. I've stood up and I've had fundraisers, I have promoted them, and I think I've done my part for that.
Additional questions?
Wait, lady down there was first.
Please discuss how you feel about accountability to your constituents. Will you be more accountable to them than other entities? And will you commit to attending county meetings regularly so that we can have a voice in your decisions on our behalf?
So first of all, several part question here. As a state rep, you're there, or any elected official, you're elected to serve your constituency. That's the number one job. However, when you're elected in a position of state rep, you don't just represent your county or District 24, you represent the whole state. You're making decisions for the entire state. But your constituency is who you have to base it on. And sometimes there's going to be decisions that maybe aren't positive on my side. But if that's what the constituency wants, that's the way you have to work to do that. As far as attending county meetings, I'm not going to sit here and promise you I'll attend every meeting. I'll try to make meetings all I can. But you have to be realistic sometimes that you cannot go to every meeting, because when you're in session, if you're calling a late night session and there's a county meeting, I'm not going to skip out on session so that we're not represented in this district to show up to a meeting, in a county meeting. I'm not trying to be harsh, I'm just being realistic. So. Bill, I think you were next.
Hey, Ryan, and you give a little time to think about this if you haven't already. What would be your three top things? I know most people run office have three things they want to do right ahead. That's good for the good of the country, good for the state, good for the people they're representing. What's the three things that are at the top of your list that you think you'd be taking care of?
You know, I've thought about this long and hard, and I don't know that I'll get to three, but I'm gonna tell you the first one. I joked with my wife. I took my 16-year-old son here about a month ago, a little less than a month ago now, to get his permit. First thing we need to do, we need to close these regional driving centers down. We need to move it back to the circuit clerk's office because they're fully capable, and there's nothing that goes on in those regional driver's offices that's any better than what we're doing in circuit clerk's offices. Another thing that we don't have a revenue problem. I don't care if it's local government, federal government, or state government. We've got a spending problem. We've got to get some of this under control. If we're going to serve for our kids and grandkids and future generations, we can't leave them with a big burdensome debt or bill. I wouldn't do that in my family business, and we can't be expected to do that in government. So, you know, we've got to get spending under control. I can't think of a specific third one. It's just a burning issue.
That's your time, Mr. Brown.
You inherited the incumbency of that.
I'm sorry, only, eligible voting members have a voice or a vote. Are you, I didn't see your name tag.
Eligible voting members.
Is that Robert?
No.
Yeah, of the committee. So only,
Thank you.
that's okay.
That is okay.
Ryan, could you just tell us a little bit of your background in more detail than just farming, and why you feel you're qualified for this position?
Sure. So I graduated from Spencer County High School. I graduated at the University of Kentucky. I spent the last 20 years of my life heavily involved with groups like Farm Bureau, Kentucky Soybean Association. I have worked hard in Frankfort on behalf of farmers. I have had the ability to make many friends in Frankfort over the years. You know, I often laugh that I took my sons to Frankfort a few weeks ago when we filed, and they took them in for a chance, and they've gone to Frankfort also to view things. And it's funny walking up and down the halls, and it's not just legislators, it's people that work in the government buildings. The ones you know, you walk by and you make friendships over time. I've also served on Kentucky State Fair Board. And I tell people firsthand, that's where I learned about government spending. You saw issues brought up. One instance, there was an issue of putting in an exhaust pipe. Anybody's been championship tractor pull before, I helped with that. And it was going to be $320,000 to do it outside. But when it had to be involved with the...
That's your time.
It was $598,000. Mr. Watson.
What's your plan of action, or what would you do to encourage or to promote voter integrity, election integrity? I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of those rules and laws have to come down from federal level, but on the state level, I think we certainly have, voter integrity is an important issue. I told the other night in the LaRue County meeting, it's a shame. I went to pay a seed bill here about a month ago, and it was over the phone with a bank out of Iowa. I had to give them, I don't know how many forms of identifying numbers to pay a bill. And I finally told the guy, I said, if somebody else wants to pay my bill, let him. But it's a shame when you walk into a voting booth, whether you know them or not, they say, you give them your name and they take and trust in that. They finally, last year, I think, asked for my driver's license, and yeah, maybe people know me. But it's a shame that we don't have to have adequate identification to go vote. Voter integrity is everything. So, anybody else before I go back to Mr. Watson? Okay, yes ma'am. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip you all ago.
Okay, I actually have continuing question regarding election, but I have an additional question too. Do you support having poll books that are not connected to the internet during elections as they currently are?
Yeah, I'm all about paper ballots. I understand it's a harder thing to do, but I'm all about paper ballots.
And not just paper ballots, but the poll books where we're signing in.
Right, yes.
Okay, and then also regarding elections, with this special election, what is your perspective of the current situation in which we have two primary candidates for this district house seat, yourself and Mr. Wagner? But due to an early vacancy of the seat, one of the candidates, Mr. Wagner, is not eligible to be nominated to fill this brief period of vacancy because he's a few months from the required age of 24 years old. This might present a potential advantage and balance to yourself during the main primary, in which both of you all will be running, should you win the nomination tonight.
I met Mr. Wagner the other night. I think Mr. Wagner's a very fine young man. The only time he cringed is when I asked him if he was married, and he didn't like that very much. But at the same time, I understand that. But that's also politics. And I'm going to compare it to a ball game. If you're playing a ball game, what's supposed to happen is you play the ball game. Everybody's out to win. And at the end of the game, you've got one winner and you've got one loser. But what happens after that? They go to the center court and they shake hands, congratulate the other one, and walk off. Politics aren't fair sometimes. And I hate it for Mr. Wagner, but that's the law and that's the way things are. There's nothing on my part that I feel like I have done to cause that. Is it an unfair advantage? Some people may see it that way. Is that politics and is that playing the game? Absolutely. Jerry.
Maybe two questions I'll throw at you real quick. There's some, looks like coming to the ballot constitutional amendments. One of the big one is school choice. And I'm kind of interested in where you're at, where that lies, will you be back on that? 'Cause I know there's a fight, and we'll be at the end of session, and you're going in, if you win this, at the end of session. And I want to know where your stance is, because we need someone strong. And then number two, I was wondering what your thoughts are on a lot of backroom deals that go on. Would you slide away from them? Like right now, we've got senators working backroom deals nationally that's selling us out. And it's right down the road, locally, it's happened, it looks like at the Blue Oval plant, there's some backroom deals on how much tax money is going to that facility. Will you stand against that for the people, or at least would you make it known what's going on when they're trying to spend our tax money without asking us?
Okay, so first question, I'm all about school choice. There's nothing wrong with competition. At the end of the day, we've got school systems out here, and if they're scared of school choice, they're scared of competition. It's no different than grain farming. If I was the only grain farmer in LaRue County, I'm gonna not pay as much for lease when to the 88 landlords I lease from. There is not a thing wrong with honest competition, and that's what we're talking about with school choice. When it comes to backroom deals, there's nothing wrong with backroom conversations, because a lot of times that's how you get things done. The only time that I would not, I think it's the general public, and your example is a great deal. Stuff was hidden about Blue Oval. I think some of that stuff should have been exposed. There's times though when you're confidential. Confidentiality you have to keep.
Thank you, Mr. Bivens. And at this time, Jeffrey will grab this. Answers not to exceed 1 minute, and Jeffrey will keep the time, and only members that are participating in the nominating committee are allowed to ask questions. Yes, yes.
Okay.
You can start with-
Hello and good evening, everybody. I'm Courtney Gilbert. I think most of you know me. I'm from LaRue County. Several of you will remember or may know me from when I was running for this actual very seat 2 years ago. At that time in my life, I was looking at my kind of trajectory, and I thought, okay, I would be willing to give 3 years of my life to serve this district in this capacity, in this seat, 1 year for the campaign, 2 years for the term. That time frame has not yet expired, so I am still willing to serve in that capacity. I'm still available and happy to do that. There are 3 things I think we should be looking at, those of you who are making this very important determination for who's going to fill this next seat. One is history. We need to be looking at the history of the candidate that you're about to put in for the rest of this year. Okay, primary election for 2024 aside, general election for 2024 aside, what this particular vote is tonight is to figure out who's going to go on that ballot in March to fill out this 1 year. We just have the rest of 2024. That's all that's going to happen for what we're deciding tonight. So we need to be looking at the history of a candidate. We need to be looking, secondly, at the knowledge of the person, and thirdly, at the skill of the person. Okay? When we're talking about who is going to be filling this position for 2024, just to finish out this year, if you look at the legislative calendar, you will find that by the time March 19th comes around, and then the vote gets certified after that, we're looking at like maybe 4 days left to session, possibly 6 if it goes really fast, okay? If you know anything about how stuff works in Frankfurt, the last few days of session are like boom, 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 okay? There's not time for a learning curve, there's not time for somebody to sit down with a person and say, hey, here's how it works, let me give you a tour, none of that. Okay, so we need to be getting somebody who's ready to go, who's just ready to like drop in and hit the ground running. I will tell you, I've spent 9 years as youth chair in the Republican GOP in my county, LaRue County. I'm now a precinct captain. I ran for office 2 years ago. I've been involved with the GOP since I was 18 years old. Okay, I've been to the Capitol like, I don't even know how many times, lots and lots of times. I know legislators, I know people, I know how the process works. And I would be very, very pleased to serve for you all as your representative just for this year to finish out this term, and then we can move on and figure out who's gonna take over in the next term. Thank you.
So at this time, we'll take questions. And you can call on, individual questioners, so I'll let you say.
Did you have a question, Chris?
I just wondered if we could have people to stand when they ask the question, because we're not able to hear well.
Okay.
So the questioners, if you're able to, please stand when you ask the questions for the benefit of the audience.
Courtney, I have a question about, you talked about the importance of calendar. Could you explain further, because you mentioned something, I think is there something like you conduct your business a certain day and then you can like vetoes or something?
Right. Okay, so the question is, what is involved in those last few days of session on the legislative calendar? So, for example, the last 4 days, the very last 2 days are gonna be for, veto override days. Okay, that's after the governor's had 10 days to veto any bills that he doesn't like or doesn't want to, have passed. Then the legislative body comes back into session for 2 days, and they are going to override any vetoes that they want to, okay? It's very busy usually. The second to last 2 days, so the penultimate 2 days this year would be 57 and 58 on the legislative calendar. That's consent calendar days, okay? What that means is like everybody's got stuff stacked up on the agenda and it is go time. It's just, everything is put before you super, super fast. If you don't vote no on something, your vote is automatically counted as a yes. So what you've got to have is somebody who is really, really ready to jump in there, can keep up with what's going on, and make quick decisions for the benefit of this community. Yes, sir.
I asked the previous candidate, and I'll ask you the same. He acknowledged the concern, but I asked what you plan to do about election integrity, and I'll ask you the same question. What would you plan to do? Action steps.
Yeah, election integrity is something that I'm very passionate about. Some of you may remember, I requested to have a recount of my primary election 2 years ago for that very purpose, because I wanted to show it is possible to hand count paper ballots. So depending on where the bills are by the time that I would get to Frankfurt, that's gonna determine a lot of what I'm able to do, because again, we're gonna be looking at a really short amount of time. So if it's possible, I will be putting amendments on stuff. I will be, queuing things up. I'll be working with people over in the Senate if that's what's needed. Sometimes that's what happens is a representative simply doesn't have a contact on the other side of the building to get something pulled through at the last second. So if that's needed, I've got contacts over there. I have contacts in the House as well. I know people in both sides of the building. So if that's, what we need to do, that's what we'll do. But yes, as far as like policy wise, I would love to see,
That's your time, Ms. Gilbert.
Thank you.
Okay. It seems like what you're saying, which makes a lot of sense to me. I've gone to places where I've taken jobs, and it's a fire hose to learn how to get that job done in 6 months. You're saying when you get there, you're gonna be in a place, or if you or Ryan gets there, in 4 days that you have to do something, you got to know exactly what you're doing, otherwise you're just a lame duck sitting in a seat doing nothing, right?
Right. So the question is, what can you do, or as I understand your question is, are you asking kind of like, what are my...
I just want to confirm what I hear you saying.
Okay.
Is that if you don't know what you're doing, and you're not ready, you're just wind up.
Right.
You're just sitting there.
Yes, there's not, at that time
It's
in the
going crazy.
session, it's not really good time to start the learning curve. That's better done at the beginning of a session. So yes, I've never been a legislator before, but I have spent a lot of time in legislators' offices, in the hallways of the Capitol, in the cafeteria. That's where the legislators, we can talk to them a lot of times. You know, in the rotunda, in the, you know, different events. Lots of people over the years, I've worked with them, I've lobbied for citizen lobbyist kind of stuff. So I'm very familiar with the process. I started learning this stuff when I was 17 years old, and I've been around in Frankfurt, in my community, in the GOP this whole time. So I think that I've got a really good head start.
How would you support the Republican National Committee's resolution to return to election excellence? Do you support going away from machines to paper ballots with local handcounts? Do you support having our poll books that are connected to the internet, no longer connected to the internet during the elections? Do you support giving county clerks the ability to directly remove names from the Kentucky inflated voter rosters? And what steps would you take to help with that?
Okay, so this is another election integrity question. Yes, in short, yes, I am in favor of all that stuff, if that is what the people want, okay? So as a representative, it is not just me going up there with my ideas. This is about representing all of you, plus all the other people with a wide variety of opinions in the district, correct? So, while I see that there are some issues that we've been seeing nationwide with machines, I don't know that getting rid of machines will be the only answer. I think it could be a good step in the right direction. However, I know that there are problems with paper only as well, so it's not like somebody couldn't cheat if they wanted to, right? It's not about, you can't eliminate corruption out of people's hearts. However, we can do what we can to take away the tools that they may be using. So the poll books, this is like an ever-changing field. And from the statewide stuff, you'll hear different things of, it's this thing and that's that thing. But the poll books is a thing, and then also bringing it back to local control. I'm a huge fan of that. Yes, sir.
Can you explain how, if the candidate has a really good chance to win in the general election, why would we not want him in there early to get this learning? Wouldn't that be a grade for us to give him that extra 10 months of learning period, so when he does get into the 2-year term, that he would be ready to go himself? I mean, do we waste our time with a candidate that maybe don't have that good of a chance to win?
That's a very good question. So the question is, do we want to give somebody a chance to have 10 months to get that learning curve underway, or do we give that 10 months to somebody else? I love the question. Here's my take on it. The 10 months that somebody might be jumping in to start that learning curve is 10 months of this job. Normally, the process would be that somebody would start at the beginning of a session, and that's usually how the learning curve starts. So if you vote for somebody who's going to jump in there early, then what's happening is you may essentially be sacrificing some of your effectiveness in this year. And that's why I want to emphasize this is about this year right now. What can we accomplish as LaRue County, as Hart County, as Greene County? Can those counties stand out this year? Or is it going to be somebody's just, overwhelmed because the fire hoses are turned on at those last few days of session and there's not much that they know to do yet? Yes, sir.
What is your background outside of the Republican Party?
Outside the Republican Party, name something, no. So I'm a musician. I've taught music lessons for, I don't even know, over 20 years. I've grown up with music. I've also grown up in church. I've done a lot of missions work. I've been overseas. I speak German. I speak some Spanish. I've done a lot of mission trips, short and midterm mission trips. That's a huge thing on my heart. I've done a lot of volunteer stuff. So crisis pregnancy center events and just things as a teenager, as an adult throughout my 20s. All kinds of stuff. I love, my bachelor's degree is in music, then I also have a degree in communications. I do filmmaking on the side. Part-time, I work as an executive assistant, and bookkeeper, yeah, a lot of stuff, quite a variety. Yes, sir.
I've got an easy one for you. What's your stance on regional driver's license and, you know, how it affects the community, people need to get things done? And what's your stance on it? I know there's some movement in Frankfurt to get that, make some changes. Are you on board with us supporting getting it back in the hands of the local communities, local courthouse?
Yes, so regional driver's licenses versus having to go to somewhere, E-town or whatever. I am absolutely in favor of getting that back to the local, the county level. I don't see any need why somebody needs to try to drive from here all the way to E-town just to get their driver's license renewed. I think that's silly. And I think that underlying that is this whole local control versus centralized control thing, and I am a local control kind of person. As much as can be done locally, let's do it locally. And people at state levels or whatever, I think sometimes they just don't give us common people as much credit as we really, you know, deserve, because we can do things, and it's not impossible. And so, yes, I believe decentralizing is really kind of the way to go. I guess that's my time.
They got it. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. That was 10 minutes? Very good. Thank you. So at this time, we will retrieve.
And give us just 1 minute, we're gonna
Mr.
prop these
Bivens.
doors back, no, we're gonna prop these doors back open, because I know it's getting hot in here.
And each candidate will appoint a observer for the tallying of votes. And so if your designee will come forward to the front. Yes, ma'am. Sure. Each candidate will have an opportunity to nominate an observer for the tallying of votes. And so if Mr. Bivens and Ms. Gilbert could send their representative to the front of the room.
If you're selecting a voting member, just make sure that they vote first. Yes, sir.
So the RPK staff will act as the tellers to distribute, collect, and count the ballots. And then at the conclusion, I will announce the results. If I could have the roll call sheet. So I will call members individually up to cast their ballot. And space it out enough to where people can have a little bit of privacy.
And just because I know this process can be confusing, with how it's weighted, your ballot will have your county typed on top, so that way when each ballot is counted, we will know that a LaRue County ballot is worth 326, so it will have the county name on top. Say that one more time.
All right, so we're going to get started with Greene County first. Tim Darnell. So you'll make your way up to the counter and you will write the name of the candidate you will be voting for on the ballot and then place it into the bucket.
And there's ink pens over here if you don't have an ink pen.
So grab a ballot, then move to the table, write your vote and drop it in the bucket. Marilyn Jones. Zachary Leftwich.
If you're a teller, after you vote, you can just stand behind the table. No, I think.
Adam Rainwater. Steve Shaw. Beginning in Hart County, Paul Brackett. Don Frazee. Roy Lampion. Vicky Lampion. John Lawler. David Middleton. Timothy Richardson. Marky Sparks. Daniel Street. Cynthia Street. Catherine Thomas. And now for LaRue County, Jerry Bird. Don Cutlet. Richard Gilbert. Courtney Gilbert. Teresa Gilbert. Frank Hornbeck. Roy Hornbeck. Sharon Hornback. Bill Manning. Oscar McGuffey. Gil Myers. Joanne Myers. R.L. Reed. Jonathan Watson. Kathy Watson. Beverly Watson. Darren Williams. Kathy Yarbrough. And have all voted that wish to do so. I think so because everybody's been called. So at this point, the polls are closed. The voting has ceased. And RPK staff will now collect the ballots. And the appointed observers, which I believe are Zachary Leftwich for Mr. Bivens and Jerry Bird for Ms. Gilbert, will observe the counting.
You're a director. Yeah, so it's messed up. So, this is the
Courtney Gilbert has been nominated as the Republican candidate for House District 24 for the special election to be held on March 19th. Given that the rules were amended, I will now announce the vote totals. And so, Ms. Gilbert, so just as a reminder, you needed 9,310 votes to receive a majority. And Ms. Gilbert received 9,726 votes, and Mr. Bivens received 8,886 votes. Before we conclude our meeting, Ms. Gilbert, would you like to make any additional remarks?
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much to all the Hart County people who let us use this facility this evening. I think they deserve a round of applause. And I also want to say thank you so much to all of our RSCC, RPK, Second District people for coming up here, down here, wherever, over here, to facilitate this, to put this on for us, to help us work through this process. I find this like a really exciting thing. This is not something that happens, typically. So I appreciate all of you, your time, gas, all of the things. So thank you. And finally, thank you all so much who came out for this process, who voted, who participated, who were active, who were engaged. To me, it's exciting to see that we had this many people turn out. And I'm really thankful for each of you participating, being interested. Of course, I'm really happy that I, got the nomination, and I appreciate that. But more than that, I just appreciate that everybody could come together, that we could work together, that we could all be a part of this. And this is for our district, right? This isn't just, me and each person here, but we're representing a lot of people. So I do not take this lightly at all. And I just want to thank you all so much. Thank you.
Is the RPK sponsoring a late night deal with the Waffle House tonight?
In closing, I would just like to, again, thank you all for your participation. Thank you to both Ms. Gilbert and Mr. Bivens for putting themselves forward. Thank you for each of you all for serving on your county committees. It's appreciated and it's important. Mr. Burt?
Could you just encourage everybody before we leave to vote now? Because we're not losing this seat to the other side. No matter what leaves, let's not lose the seat. Everybody keep that in
As a helpful reminder,
Thank you, I didn't interrupt you.
no, you're good. The election date is March 19th, so please be aware of that. Ms. Vicky?
I have a question, and it may be on, but maybe not, but, does the RPK help to financially support the candidate?
And the final thing I would say is that I do think it's worth noting one more time that Representative Bradon Reed has served this district well, and we appreciate his service and wish him well in his future endeavors. This concludes our business for this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Drive safe, and then those that need to help sign